in Paradise at Advanced Auto Dynamics, and if you've seen any of our footage, I know you've noticed this 70 SS Chevelle. It's got a 454 in it, and it's all that in a bag of chips. It belongs to one of our clients here, and he came in with a complaint that the electrical system had shorts in it. When we did the evaluation on the vehicle, we found that yet and still, some wiring had been charred beyond repair and had to be eliminated or replaced. And we also noticed that his alternator was set up for internal regulation, and he still had it set up for external regulation. So we had to make some modifications there in the wiring system. So basically, all the charred wiring's been replaced in this, and I won't bore you with the details of how I took it apart, but anybody who's trying to attempt this pretty much knows what wiring looks like when it's beyond its limits. And basically you separate the loom, trace it out, replace it as needed. I like soldering, however I did in the end when we added the fusible links to these connectors that will be connecting to the battery. I used a quick connect that is also heat shrink property. And that's only because of the thickness of the gauge of the wire. On the thinner gauge wire, we actually soldered the joints in and then applied heat shrink also. Now, we also replaced the battery cable because one, it was a typical store-bought, you get it cable, which had a thickness of about this. This being a 454 Chevy, we actually like the larger cable, and these cables were custom made for us by a shop here in Dallas. And we also added the heat shrink or the heat wrap, a DEI product, and we ran it between the headers and the heat shield on the starter down to the starter bolt itself on the positive terminal. We also engaged in the wire off of the ignition switch and rewrapped it because we found it to be charred. And again, we added some heat shrink, which, let me get my finger out the way, you should be able to see right down there. Or heat wrap, I should say. Now, this high intensity heat wrap is supposed to be good. They got it off the space shuttle. So it's supposed to be good for temperatures up to 600 degrees or better. The average exhaust temperature heat is about 400 degrees. So what we're going to do with these two wires is connect them to the battery terminal, and we've got our other wire connected from the battery terminal over to the alternator. And I tested this theory last night with some jumper wire, and there weren't any negative draws on the system. Actually, the battery rejuvenated. The other problem that we seem to have with this vehicle was that the headlights weren't operating, and we traced that back to the dimmer switch on the floor. Okay, now, we've actually taken this out, which is basically removing the washer that inserts into this stem piece here. On the 70 Chevelle, these old schools, there's a button right here that you have to push. That allows you to remove, there it is. That allows you to remove this stem. And it's the same thing when you insert it again, you've got to push it out. And basically that's the switch pulling the lights on and off on this vehicle. Now, when we did our testing, we tested for power in all these circuits, and we actually had power in all these circuits. And then we traced it forward where we didn't have any power, and then we traced it back. And our culprit was this dimmer switch right here. This is the original unit, and you can see a little toasting right there on the trim piece or the tab. Okay. And when we tested it, this switch was intermittent, which means it was working, but it wasn't at different times. So we replaced it with another one, brand new out of the box, and we turned on the lights, and actually everything worked.